Welcome back to the deep dive. We're the show where we really trying to cut through all the noise and get straight to what actually matters on some of these big, fascinating topics. And today, we are plunging headfirst into artificial intelligence. But maybe with a slightly different lens than you're used to. For the past couple of years, the excitement around AI, it's been so broad, right? Almost like overwhelmingly generalized. Every week felt like some new breakthrough, some mind-blowing new tool. But it feels like, certainly in Q2 of 2025, something fundamental has kind of shifted. We seem to be moving into a much more mature phase, definitely a more strategically focused era of AI. It's maybe less about just the cool new shiny toy and much more about deep structural change and, frankly, the profound implications of that change. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to frame it. Mature, strategic.
Mm-hmm.
I think that really captures the shift we're seeing. So our deep dive today, it's an in-depth analysis of what we've identified as the top 12 global AI topics that have really captured attention this last quarter, Q2 2025. And this isn't just about, what's trending on social media or the latest flashy demo. It's based on a pretty comprehensive report that meticulously digs into everything. Global search trends, sure, but also public user activity and even the intricate, often really high-stakes conversations happening in executive boardrooms.
Right, getting beyond the surface level.
Exactly. Our mission here is to really cut through that surface-level chatter, and reveal the deeper, maybe more consequential strategic currents, the stuff that's actually driving enterprise investment and the direction of technological development. Because these forces, they're shaping the future, and they are often quite distinct from the popular public-facing tools that get most of the headlines.
Makes sense.
And as we sifted through all this data, we've kind of identified three big interlocking themes that are really defining this new phase.
Okay, what are they?
Well, first, there's this really powerful and I'd say accelerating drive to create genuinely autonomous systems, AI that can act independently with purpose.
Autonomous.
Second, we're seeing this deep, pervasive integration of AI, like right into the core processes across, well, virtually every industry you could imagine. It's becoming fundamental.
Not just an add-on anymore.
Not at all. And finally, there's this really high-stakes strategic battle unfolding. A battle for control over the foundational infrastructure, the application platforms, basically the systems that will undeniably define the next decade of technology. It's a fascinating, complex landscape right now.
That last one sounds huge, but let's start with the first one. The autonomous systems. That feels like a major conceptual shift, genuinely changing how we even think about AI. We're moving beyond just, simple prompt and response, right? Asking a question, getting an answer. Now, it sounds like we're talking about AI that's proactive, goal-oriented, and can operate independently to actually achieve complex objectives. This isn't just some interesting research idea. It sounds like it's right at the leading edge of corporate strategy, the big long-term ambition for the whole field. Here's where it gets really interesting.
Indeed. And the term that's just rapidly emerged, the one everyone's talking about, especially technology leaders and enterprise strategists, is agentic AI.
Agentic AI. Okay.
And look, it's not just another buzzword. It really represents a significant leap. Think about simpler tech, like robotic process automation, RPA. That just automates predefined repetitive tasks based on really rigid rules.
Right, like processing invoices the same way every time.
Exactly. Or even current chatbots, which are mostly reactive and they just respond to your prompts. Agentic AI is different. We're talking about systems that have the capability to autonomously plan, to reason through problems, and then execute complex, multi-step tasks with, ideally, minimal human oversight.
So they figure things out on their own.
To a large extent, yes. What fundamentally defines these AI agents are some key characteristics. They need to be able to perceive their environment, understand and pursue specific goals you give them, learn from their experiences as they go, and crucially, adapt their plans dynamically as conditions change.
Adapt on the fly.
Precisely. They're not just executing a pre-written script. They're designed to be genuine problem solvers, almost like digital project managers or coordinators.
And this isn't just theory, right? You said this shift is actually quantifiable. I mean, when you look at, say, corporate earnings calls from Q2 2025, there's been a truly significant surge in talk about this. Mentions of agentic AI and AI agents, they jumped by, 39% and 41% quarter over quarter. Huge increase.
That's right. Massive jumps.
And what I find even more telling, maybe, is the contrast. Discussions around the more general term generative AI, which was everywhere last year, actually declined during the same period. That seems like a clear, unmistakable signal that executive attention is pivoting. It's moving from just the underlying cool generative tech itself to its most advanced, potentially most powerful application, these autonomous agents.
It's a definite shift in focus.
And it's not just the companies themselves saying this. We're seeing major strategic advisors like MIT Sloan, Morgan Stanley. They're also identifying agentic AI as a defining trend for 2025. They're highlighting its potential to fundamentally reshape business processes, maybe even entire industries.
And this commitment, it isn't just theoretical for the big tech players either. They're actively building for this future. Microsoft, for instance, they're framing AI agents as nothing less than the apps of the AI era. Think about that framing.
The apps of the AI era. Wow.
Yeah. So they're not just developing individual agents. They're actually building an entire copilot control system. It's designed specifically to manage and orchestrate these autonomous entities, almost like an operating system manages traditional applications on your computer,
An OS for agents.
essentially.
Yeah.
And Google's on a very similar path. They've explicitly defined their vision for their cloud data platform as agentic. The idea is for it to be a place where specialized data agents can operate autonomously on behalf of users, handling complex data tasks without constant human handholding.
Like what kind of tasks?
Imagine telling an agent your ultimate goal, like analyze sales trends for this region and identify key drivers, and it orchestrates all the necessary data movements, transformations, and analyses to actually achieve that goal for you. That's the vision.
Okay, but let's bring it back down to earth for a second. There's still a pretty significant gap, right, between that grand transformative vision, AI managing your whole vacation, or running a global supply chain, and the current reality. What are we actually seeing deployed now?
Oh, absolutely. There's a huge gap. The long-term ambition is, frankly, almost sci-fi right now. The initial enterprise deployments, the ones actually happening today, are much more modest, much more cautious. We're seeing these early agentic tools being applied to small, highly structured internal tasks, things where the financial and operational risks are pretty low.
Like what? Give me an example.
Think about helping an employee reset their password automatically, or processing a simple vacation time request through an HR system.
Okay, useful, saves time, but not exactly revolutionizing the company.
Exactly. Necessary, certainly more efficient, maybe frees up some IT or HR time, but it's not quite the world-changing transformation that the C-suite is talking about in those earnings calls. Not yet.
And this gap, this difference between the big vision and the baby steps, it's creating some interesting side effects.
It really is. It's created this fascinating, almost paradoxical downstream bottleneck. Because the intense C-suite focus on the future of agentic AI is generating immediate, urgent demand for foundational infrastructure right now. Well, as companies start these pilot projects, even the small ones, they quickly bump up against the limitations of their existing data infrastructure. They realize it just isn't ready for these more advanced systems, especially when it comes to organizing and accessing the vast, messy piles of unstructured data emails, documents, images that these agents will eventually need to understand and act upon effectively.
So the fancy AI dream needs better plumbing first.
Precisely. And this has created an immediate boom in what you might call the less glamorous but absolutely essential parts of the tech stack. We're seeing a huge surge in hiring for data engineers, cloud specialists, people who know how to build modern data architectures. And there's massive demand for platforms like Databricks and Snowflake. These are essential tools for building the modern data lakehouses that sophisticated agents will absolutely require to function.
So it's kind of ironic. The talk about the far out future is driving massive investment in the foundational data layer of today.
Completely. It's like everyone decided they want to build self-driving cars tomorrow, but realized they first need to invest heavily in paving better roads, installing smarter traffic lights, and standardizing street signs today. The future vision is driving the essential, but maybe less exciting, present-day infrastructure build-out.
That's a really sharp observation. And it connects directly to this idea of a new competitive front emerging, doesn't it? You mentioned that battle for control earlier. It sounds like the goal for these big tech companies isn't just about building the smartest AI models anymore.
No, not at all. It's much bigger than that now.
It's about owning the dominant ecosystem, right? The operating system, as you put it, where all these future AI agents will actually run.
Exactly. When you hear Microsoft talking about agents as the next generation of apps, or Google designing its data platform to be inherently agentic, these aren't just product features or interesting technical directions.
They're strategic power plays.
Absolutely. They are strategic plays aimed squarely at owning the future of software distribution and, frankly, capturing a huge slice of the future digital economy.
It really does echo those historic platform battles, doesn't it? Like Windows versus Mac back in the day, or iOS versus Android on mobile.
It's the same playbook, just updated for the AI era. The long-term objective is crystal clear for these players. Control the agent store, manage how third-party agents get distributed, and crucially, capture a percentage of all the economic activity that happens on that platform.
Because whoever controls the platform controls the market.
That's how you build a powerful, defensible, competitive moat. It's about becoming the indispensable hub where AI work gets done.
Okay, so that's the agentic vision and the platform battle. Now, moving from the agents themselves, what about the core engines? The large language models, the LLMs, you said they're evolving too.
Yes, and along two very distinct, but I'd argue highly complementary, paths simultaneously. On one hand, there's this intense, almost philosophical quest for what's being called AI reasoning.
Reasoning, meaning making them think more like humans.
Sort of. It's about enabling them to solve complex problems by breaking them down into logical, verifiable steps, rather than just relying on statistical pattern matching from their training data. This is seen as absolutely critical for unlocking those truly high-value enterprise applications we keep talking about.
Okay, that's one path. What's the other?
The other path is a massive, equally urgent push for efficiency. This is all about creating smaller, faster, and significantly cheaper models to run.
Why the push for efficiency?
To make AI truly scalable, profitable for the providers, and accessible to a much wider range of applications, and frankly to a much wider array of businesses, not just the giant corporations.
Okay, let's dig into reasoning first. What's driving that specific quest? Sounds complex.
It is. And it's almost entirely driven by demand for those high-value enterprise solutions. Think about it from a business perspective. Morgan Stanley, for instance, explicitly identifies this need for AI reasoning as a primary force behind the increasing demand for advanced computing power across industries. LLM companies know that to deliver on promises for things like strategic planning support, navigating complex regulatory compliance, or optimizing intricate business processes, the AI needs to do more than just generate plausible text.
It needs to actually understand and explain.
Precisely. Think about a bank needing to justify why an AI system approved or denied a loan application to regulators, or a healthcare system needing an AI to explain the steps it took to arrive at a potential diagnosis. That requires reasoning. Microsoft echoes this. They highlight the advanced reasoning capabilities in models like OpenAI's latest, o1, as absolutely essential for fields that rely heavily on intricate, transparent problem-solving fields like science, law, medicine.
So reasoning is a prerequisite for the really sophisticated agent behavior you mentioned earlier.
Exactly. This evolution, moving from basic pattern matching and text prediction towards structured, verifiable reasoning, is considered fundamental for enabling the truly sophisticated, trustworthy, and adaptable behavior we expect from those next-generation AI agents. They need to be able to think through problems, not just react.
But then there's the flip side, this major push for efficiency. You mentioned the model tax. That sounds expensive.
It absolutely is, and it's rapidly becoming a significant factor, maybe even a barrier, for widespread AI adoption. The high computational cost, not just of training these massive frontier models, but more importantly, the ongoing cost of running them, the inference cost, is huge. We're talking massive cloud infrastructure bills, constant energy consumption, the need for specialized, expensive hardware.
It adds up fast.
Incredibly fast. This model tax, as it's increasingly being called, has become a major bottleneck for many businesses, especially smaller ones. And this, in turn, has spurred an intense industry-wide focus on efficiency.
So how is the market responding? What does efficiency look like in practice?
The market response has been a real proliferation of smaller, much more cost-effective models. Think about things like Google's Gemini 2.5 flashlight, or OpenAI developing what they call a mini small language model, or SLM.
Smaller models, got it.
These are explicitly designed to be faster, require less compute power per query, and therefore be significantly cheaper to run. The trend now is less about building one single colossal monolithic model that tries to do everything, and more about developing an entire family of models.
A family.
Yeah, a range of models, each optimized for a different balance of performance versus cost. It's a growing recognition that not every single task needs the absolute most powerful, most expensive AI model available. Sometimes good enough is actually better if it's much cheaper and faster.
So this is creating a split in the market then, like a premium tier for the really heavy lifting and then something more accessible for everyday tasks.
Exactly. That's the bifurcation we're clearly seeing emerge. You've got this premium tier, dominated by the big cutting-edge frontier models from the major players OpenAI with their GPT-4 series, Google with the Gemini family, Anthropic with Claude. These are the state-of-the-art all-purpose models, often deployed for the most complex, highest-stakes tasks where performance is paramount.
Okay, at the top shelf.
Right. But in parallel, a much larger second market is rapidly growing. This market is all about highly efficient, often specialized, and frequently open-source models. Think of companies like Mistral or DeepSeek.
What's the appeal there?
Well, these models are often good enough, meaning they might deliver, say, 90–95% of the performance of the frontier models for the vast majority of common business tasks. But they can be run at a fraction of the cost.
That's a huge difference.
It is. And crucially, sometimes these smaller, more efficient models can even be deployed on-premise, within a company's own data center, or even directly on a device like a laptop or phone. That's a massive advantage for companies with strict data privacy requirements, or maybe limited cloud budgets or latency concerns.
So it creates a real strategic choice for businesses.
Absolutely. It presents a fundamental dilemma for almost every business exploring AI. Do you pay the premium price for that top-tier all-purpose model from one of the big platform providers? Or do you opt for a more economical, perhaps more specialized model, maybe even an open source one that solves your specific problem effectively and much more cheaply? That choice, that trade-off between peak performance and cost efficiency is going to increasingly define corporate AI strategy for the foreseeable future.
And linking that reasoning capability back to enterprise needs. You mentioned trust and security. It sounds absolutely critical, especially if you're in a regulated industry like finance or healthcare. You can't just have a black box making decisions.
Absolutely not. Transparency is becoming paramount. A model that can effectively show its work, provide a logical, step-by-step explanation for its conclusions, its recommendations, that's inherently more transparent, more auditable, and ultimately less of a risky black box than one that just spits out an answer with no justification.
So how do they make them show their work?
Well, that's why companies are investing heavily in techniques like mechanistic interpretability. It's essentially the science of trying to reverse engineer how these incredibly complex models arrive at their decisions, trying to understand the inner workings of their neural networks, not just treating them as magic.
Trying to peek inside the box.
Exactly. For enterprises, especially in those highly regulated sectors, finance, healthcare, insurance, the ability to provide a verifiable reasoning process behind an AI's output isn't just a nice-to-have. It's rapidly becoming a critical requirement for adoption. Without that auditability, they simply cannot use AI for core functions due to regulatory hurdles and massive liability concerns.
So the implication is pretty significant for the market.
It really is. Yeah. The potential winner in the high-stakes enterprise AI market may not actually be the model that's the most creative, or even the most powerful in raw benchmark terms. It might well be the one that proves to be the most transparent, the most reliable, and the most auditable. Trust, verifiable reasoning, clear accountability, there's a question. These might become the ultimate differentiators, trumping raw intelligence.
Fascinating. Okay, let's pivot a bit now. We've talked about the underlying engines, the strategic infrastructure, the agentic future. Let's talk about how people, the general public, actually interact with AI every single day. We need to dive into that application layer, the tools, the platforms, the interfaces that are shaping the current AI experience for most users. This is where the rubber really meets the road for millions, maybe billions of people.
Indeed. And if you want the most direct insight into which AI topics are really capturing global attention, you look at this landscape of user-facing applications. This is where the vast majority of the world's users actually touch and feel AI. And the data reveals a truly dynamic picture. It's an increasingly diversifying ecosystem. While, yes, a few large general-purpose platforms still lead in overall usage, there's this really vibrant and rapidly growing market of specialized tools that are successfully capturing significant user attention for very specific use cases, often by simply offering a superior, more focused experience in their particular niche.
So who is still leading the pack in overall usage, and who are these emerging challengers making waves?
Well, no big surprise. OpenAI's ChatGPT remains the undisputed leader in this consumer-facing space. It just commands enormous traffic and search volume globally. A lot of that is down to its early mover advantage, plus continuous innovation, like integrating the DALL-E 3 image generation directly into the chat experience.
Still the benchmark for many.
Definitely. And following closely, you have the major platforms from the other tech giants, notably Google Gemini and Microsoft Copilot. They obviously benefit hugely from being integrated into massive existing ecosystems like Google Search, Android, Windows, Microsoft 365.
They have huge built-in user bases.
Exactly, massive distribution. However, the market is far from static. We're seeing this really rich ecosystem of specialized challengers demonstrating significant traction and, in some cases, truly explosive growth.
Like who?
Well, dedicated research assistants like Perplexity AI, which really focuses on providing answers with citations that trust factor again. Writing and editing aids like Quillbot and Grammarly using AI to refine text, a whole host of really powerful image generators, Canva's AI suite, Midjourney, Leonardo.ai are huge. And then these innovative audio generation tools like Suno and 11 Labs pushing the boundaries of AI-created music and voice cloning.
That market dynamism really jumps out when you look at search growth trends, doesn't it? I saw some numbers showing exploding growth for tools like Perplexity AI, Anthropic's Claude, even Google Gemini itself as it gets more integrated. It really indicates users are actively looking for alternatives, seeking out specialized solutions beyond maybe just ChatGPT.
It does. Users are exploring.
And it feels like these popular tools fall into pretty clear categories now, reflecting how people are actually using AI day to day. You've got the general GPT's chatbots, then the image, video, audio generators for creative stuff, writing, editing tools for productivity, research assistants for finding and synthesizing info, and programming assistants for coding help.
That's a great summary of the main categories. And just to put some hard numbers behind this to show the scale, if we look at, say, February 2025 traffic and search volume data from the report, ChatGPT, including his DALL-E image function, is just a behemoth. Over 4 billion visits in February traffic, over 630 million in global search volume. Clearly ranked 1.
4 billion. Wow.
Yeah. DeepSeek, another popular GPT model, is also performing incredibly strongly. Over 600 million in traffic, 150 million search volume, putting it at rank 2.
Still huge numbers.
But then you see these specialized players gaining significant ground. Perplexity AI, focused on that cited research answer engine niche, already hit 110 million in February traffic, over 26 million search volume. That puts it ranked 4 globally. Impressive.
Yeah. Ahead of many bigger names, potentially.
In terms of dedicated AI tool usage, yes. And then look at Suno, the tool that generates entire songs from text prompts. It already boasts nearly 46 million February traffic and over 12 million search volume. That makes it rank 9 globally.
A music generator in the top 10 AI tools.
Right. So this data clearly illustrates ChatGPT's dominant lead, no question. But it also undeniably shows how these specialized tools are successfully carving out substantial market share. It proves that users are increasingly seeking out best-in-class specific capabilities rather than relying solely on one single generalist tool for absolutely everything.
This sounds exactly like a classic unbundling phenomenon playing out, like we saw with websites breaking apart into apps. When ChatGPT first burst onto the scene, it essentially bundled a whole suite of capabilities together, right? Writing, coding, summarizing, brainstorming, even basic image stuff all in one place. And that breadth was revolutionary at the time.
It was. It showed the potential.
But now it seems this new wave of startups is successfully unbundling those individual features, often by offering a dramatically superior, much more specialized product for just one of those tasks.
That's a perfect analogy.
Like, Perplexity is unbundling the research and answer engine function, focusing purely on cited, trustworthy answers. Suno is unbundling music creation, allowing anyone to generate complex tracks without musical knowledge. Leonardo.ai is unbundling professional-grade image generation, offering fine-tuning and control that a general chatbot just can't match.
But going deep on specific verticals.
Exactly. And the implication here seems profound. Maybe the future of consumer AI isn't going to be a single, all-powerful application that does everything moderately well. Maybe it's more like a robust suite of best-in-class specialized tools that you, the user, pick and choose for specific tasks. Much like how we use apps on our smartphones today, right? You don't use one app for everything. You use the best app for that specific thing you need to do.
I think that's a very likely trajectory, a toolbox rather than a single magic wand. And this ties directly into another absolutely key development, this multimodal wave, which is AI's rapid expansion beyond just dealing with text.
Multimodal, meaning multiple types of data.
Exactly. It's about AI's native ability to understand, process, and even generate images, audio, and video, not just converting them into text descriptions first. This capability is enabling much richer, more intuitive applications, and believe me, it is a core strategic area of intense focus and massive investment for every single major technology company right now. They see it as the next frontier of human-computer interaction.
We've definitely seen image and audio generation just explode in popularity recently. Some of the results are truly jaw-dropping, almost unbelievable.
Absolutely. Image generation from text prompts has become one of AI's most popular and, frankly, most visibly impressive applications.
Yeah.
You mentioned the big names: Canva AI Suite, Midjourney, Leonardo.ai, OpenAI's DALL-E 3 seamlessly integrated into ChatGPT and Microsoft Copilot.
Yeah.
These are consistently among the most used AI tools globally.
And the quality is improving so
At
fast.
a breathtaking pace, Google's latest image and form model, for example, boasts significantly improved photorealism, better understanding of prompts, even better text rendering within images. It's becoming incredibly difficult, sometimes impossible, to distinguish AI-generated images from real photographs.
Scary, almost.
It raises questions, for sure. And it's not just static images anymore. AI-powered audio generation tools like Suno, 11 Labs, Udio creating music or realistic voices, and video generation and editing, led by platforms like Runway, Nvidia.io, Agen. These are rapidly growing categories, attracting millions of users, creating entirely new forms of digital content at an unprecedented scale and speed.
So what's happening under the hood technologically to make all this possible? What makes these systems suddenly so much better at seeing and hearing and generating this stuff compared to just a year or two ago?
Yeah, a lot of this remarkable progress is built upon fundamental advances in the underlying technology, particularly in computer vision and how we model different data types together. The field of computer vision is being revolutionized by new architectures like vision transformers, or VITs, and also by these large-scale foundation models designed specifically for vision, analogous to the LLMs for text.
Vision transformers, how do they work differently?
Well, what makes VITs revolutionary is their ability to process images, much more like how large language models process text. Instead of just looking at individual pixels in isolation, they look at the relationships between different patches or parts of the image. This allows them to understand context, objects, and complex scenes far more effectively than older methods like convolutional neural networks or CNNs.
So they read images more holistically.
That's a good way to think about it. And the ultimate goal here, where we're seeing truly seamless integration, is in what's called natively multimodal AI. Google's Gemini, for instance, isn't just a language model bolted onto an image model. It's designed from the ground up as a family of models that can concurrently handle diverse data types: text, image, audio, video all together, understanding the interplay between them.
And that enables new kinds of features.
Incredibly powerful new features that really redefine the user experience. Take Google's Ask Photos feature they rolled out. It now allows users to ask complex natural language questions about the content of their own personal photo libraries.
Like what?
Like, you could literally ask it, "What landmarks did I see on my trip to Paris last year?" Or, "Show me pictures of my dog playing in the snow." And the AI can actually see and interpret the images to find and show you the relevant photos, or even synthesize an answer based on them.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Slightly creepy.
It blurs the lines, definitely. Similarly, Microsoft 365 Copilot can now analyze the content of images stored in your OneDrive, maybe charts, in a presentation slide image, or products in a photo, and engage in detailed multi-turn conversations about them. It'd offer insights, help you organize them based on visual content, extract data.
So the AI isn't just generating images anymore, it's understanding them deeply.
Exactly. And that understanding, that ability for AI to process visual and auditory data from the real world, it seems like these popular consumer multimodal apps are actually a crucial stepping stone towards something even bigger, right? Something called embodied AI. Can you explain what that means and why these developments are so important for it?
You're spot on. This progress in multimodal AI is far, far more than just about creating better consumer apps or cool new ways to generate pictures or music. It is a critical, absolutely essential stepping stone toward a much larger technological frontier: embodied AI.
Embodied AI meaning AI in the physical world.
Precisely. This refers to intelligent systems that can operate in and interact directly with the physical world. Think advanced robots, truly autonomous vehicles, maybe even smart home devices that can genuinely understand their surroundings and act intelligently within them.
And they need to see and hear to do that.
Exactly. The ability to process and understand visual data, seeing what's happening around them, and auditory data, hearing commands or ambient sounds, understanding physical context is an essential prerequisite for any intelligent system that needs to operate effectively and safely in the physical world. You can't have a useful robot if it's blind and deaf.
Makes sense.
So these rapid advancements we're seeing in computer vision and multimodal understanding, they are fundamentally laying the crucial software foundation for this next generation of physical AI.
It's the brains for the future robots.
In a way, yes, and it's already happening. Google, for example, has already rolled out a version of its Gemini model that's small and efficient enough to run locally on robots. It helps them perform complex tasks by interpreting their environment through cameras and sensors, understanding spoken instructions.
So what looks like a fun consumer feature, like Ask Photos?
Is actually serving as a crucial development platform and testing ground for the far more complex, potentially far more economically significant industrial trend of embodied AI. It's paving the way for robots and autonomous systems that can truly see and hear and understand the messy, unpredictable world around them.
That puts those consumer apps in a whole new light.
Okay, now let's talk about search. Perhaps one of the most visible, widely discussed, and frankly, potentially disruptive impacts of AI on our daily lives is how it's fundamentally challenging traditional web search. We're talking about maybe the biggest shakeup in 2 decades.
Absolutely. It feels like a paradigm shift is genuinely underway. We're
Wow.
moving away from just getting that list of 10 blue links, which has been the standard for so long.
To receiving direct, synthesized answers, almost like having a conversation with the internet itself, where it tells you what it found, maybe even summarizes it.
Exactly. And this represents a critical, even existential strategic battleground, especially for incumbents like Google, whose entire empire was built on refining and monetizing those blue links through advertising.
And the most prominent example of this new paradigm, this answer engine idea, seems to be Perplexity AI, right? Their growth has been stunning.
It really has. The numbers are staggering, something like 7,800% search growth over the past 5 years. That's truly unprecedented acceleration for a new search player. Perplexity has very successfully positioned itself not just as a search engine, but as a conversational answer engine. Its core value proposition is providing direct, synthesized answers to user queries, but, and this is crucial, it cites its sources meticulously.
That trust and transparency thing again?
It's key to their brand. They want you to be able to verify the information easily. And it's working. It's ranking as the fourth most used AI tool globally, right behind the giants like ChatGPT, Gemini, and Copilot, demonstrates massive user adoption. It shows there's a clear, strong appetite for this new model of information retrieval. Users are increasingly valuing direct answers that they feel they can trust, rather than having to click through multiple links and synthesize the information themselves.
So how are the established giants, Google and Microsoft, reacting to this? I mean, this must be keeping executives there up at night. It strikes at the core of their business.
Oh, you can be sure it is. They're responding with aggressive, almost defensive urgency. It's clear they see it as an existential threat. Google has moved quickly to deeply integrate its AI mode, powered by its Gemini models, directly into the main Google search product. They're offering AI-generated summaries at the top of results pages. They call them AI overviews, and providing a more conversational interface right there on the familiar search results page.
So you don't even have to leave Google to get the AI answer.
That's the goal. And Microsoft has done something very similar, integrating its Copilot chatbot, which used to be called Bing AI, directly into the Bing search engine, often providing chat-based answers alongside traditional links.
And this reflects a real change in how people want to search.
It seems so. Recent surveys show that specific search, getting a direct answer to a factual question and generate ideas, are now among the absolute top use cases for why people turn to AI tools. Users are increasingly looking for more synthesized, more analytical information directly from the search bar, potentially bypassing the need to click through to individual websites as often.
And that's the threat to the business model, right? The ad revenue.
Exactly. This trend poses a direct existential threat to the traditional advertising-supported link-based business model that has powered search engines like Google for a generation. It leads to more zero-click searches, where users get their answer directly on the results page and never click on an ad or an organic link. That potentially means fewer ad impressions, less traffic referral to websites. It disrupts the whole ecosystem.
So if the game isn't just about finding the most links anymore, what's the new basis for competition? You mentioned trust. It sounds like this is becoming a trust war, especially with AI's known tendency to, well, make stuff up or hallucinate.
Precisely. As these AI-powered answer engines become more and more commonplace, the key differentiator is unequivocally shifting. It's moving away from just the speed or the comprehensiveness of the results and squarely towards the trustworthiness and reliability of the answer provided.
Because you can't trust a hallucinatory answer.
Exactly. And this is a critical battleground because, as you said, generative AI models are known to hallucinate.
Yeah.
They can confidently present inaccurate, sometimes completely fabricated information as if it were fact. And unsurprisingly, public skepticism of AI-generated content is actually quite high.
Hmm.
Users are rightly wary of misinformation, especially when it's presented with such authority.
So how are companies trying to win this trust war?
We're seeing different strategies. New players, like Perplexity, as we discussed, are building their entire brand around providing those meticulously cited sources for every answer they give, explicitly empowering users to verify the information themselves. Transparency is their weapon.
And the incumbents.
This puts immense pressure back on incumbents like Google. They're now forced to focus heavily on improving the quality, the accuracy, and the verifiability of their AI overviews. They know that getting it wrong, especially on sensitive topics, can cause huge reputational damage. And there's another layer here.
Yeah.
This dynamic creates a powerful feedback loop. The sheer proliferation of potentially low-quality AI-generated content, what some are calling AI slop, across the web, actually makes original, human-created, human-verified authoritative sources more valuable than ever before.
Why?
Because those trusted sources are essential, both for training more accurate, less hallucination-prone AI models in the first place, and for users who are trying to cross-reference and verify the AI-generated answers they're getting.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener, when you go to search for something?
It means the future of search is rapidly becoming this critical race, a race to build the most trusted truth layer on top of the web's vast, often chaotic ocean of information. It's going to be less about just finding links and much more about finding verifiable answers you can actually rely on and knowing why you can rely on them. Trust is the new currency of search.
That's a huge shift. Okay, let's shift our own focus now. We've covered the consumer-facing tools, the search wars. Let's move into AI as a powerful engine for industrial transformation and economic activity. We need to explore the business and financial dimensions now. How is AI moving from those scattered experiments we talked about earlier into full-scale production within companies? It really feels like the business world has finally moved past that initial, maybe slightly breathless AI hype cycle.
I think you're absolutely right about that. The year 2025, especially this second quarter, really marks a crucial inflection point for AI adoption within the enterprise. The era of scattered tentative experiments, isolated pilot projects run by the innovation team. That's undeniably giving way now to strategic, scaled implementation across the entire organization.
So good. Serious.
Very serious. The conversation happening in boardrooms has fundamentally shifted. It's moved away from the initial hype around AI's potential and towards a much more rigorous, hard-nosed focus on measurable return on investment, ROI, robust data security protocols, and effective workforce integration.
The practicalities.
Exactly. Companies are no longer just asking if they should use AI. The question now is how. How do we deploy it responsibly? How do we deploy it effectively, specifically to drive tangible revenue growth and achieve significant verifiable cost efficiencies across our operations? This shift is profound because it moves AI from being a cool future tech to a core business imperative today.
And the adoption rates reflect that seriousness. Are they as high as the talk suggests? It feels like it's not just a few tech-savvy companies anymore.
The numbers are genuinely striking, and they paint a picture of incredibly broad-based adoption, much faster than many previous technology waves. A recent global survey indicates that a remarkable 78% of companies worldwide are now using AI in some capacity. That's more than three-quarters.
Wow.
And even more telling, maybe, is that 92% of companies surveyed plan to increase their investment in AI technology over the next year. So the momentum is still building rapidly.
And it's not just dabbling, right? They're using it across the business.
Correct. Nearly 80% of these organizations report that they are implementing AI across multiple business functions, moving well beyond those isolated pilot programs in one department. The focus is squarely on practical applications that solve real-world business problems and deliver clear, demonstrable value.
What are the most common use cases we're seeing now that it's moving into production?
The most common ones are often focused on efficiency and customer interaction. Customer service is huge. 56% of companies are using AI there for things like intelligent chatbots handling routine queries, personalized support recommendations for human agents, or analyzing customer sentiment. Cybersecurity and fraud prevention is another major area, at 51%. AI is crucial there for real-time threat detection, spotting anomalies that humans would miss. Then you have internal digital assistants helping employees with tasks, finding information that's at 47%, and enhancing customer relationship management, or CRM, systems is close behind at 46%, using AI to analyze customer data for better sales predictions, targeted marketing, and identifying retention risks.
So the overarching goals are pretty clear.
Very clear. Automate complex, often repetitive workflows, enhance data-driven decision-making by surfacing insights faster, and ultimately boost overall productivity across the entire organization. It's about working smarter and faster.
Okay, so companies are deploying AI widely. Are they actually seeing the measurable results they're looking for from all this investment? And what are the main roadblocks, the challenges they're still hitting as they try to scale these initiatives beyond just a few departments?
Well, after that initial phase of experimentation and maybe some hype-driven investment, business leaders are now, quite rightly, demanding quantifiable results. And yes, they are starting to get them, or at least they're reporting them. There's a growing emphasis internally on actually measuring the productivity gains, tracking efficiency improvement, and ensuring that these AI initiatives deliver a clear, positive return on investment. This has led to the development of new internal tools and methodologies specifically designed to evaluate the efficacy of AI systems, trying to prove the value.
And are those efforts showing results?
The reports suggest they are, yes. We're seeing reports of measurable double-digit performance gains in functions like marketing, maybe through better campaign targeting or content generation and software engineering, where AI assists with code generation, debugging, or testing. We're also hearing about significant cost savings, sometimes exceeding 10%, in areas like supply chain management using AI for better demand forecasting, or logistics optimization and human resources, where AI streamlines administrative tasks like recruiting or onboarding.
But it can't all be smooth sailing. What are the persistent challenges?
Oh, definitely not smooth sailing. Significant challenges absolutely persist. Interestingly, cultural and change management issues are very frequently cited as the primary barrier to becoming a truly data-driven, AI-powered organization. Getting people, the humans in the loop, to trust the systems, adopt new ways of working, maybe change long-established processes,
Yeah,
that's often much harder than implementing the technology itself.
the people problem.
Always the hardest part. Beyond that, there are still persistent gaps in corporate governance around AI usage, clear policies, ethical guidelines. There's that dire shortage of technical talent we keep hearing about, particularly people who understand both AI and the specific business domain. And there are ongoing concerns about ethical readiness, particularly around ensuring AI models don't perpetuate or even amplify existing societal biases present in the data they're trained on.
That's a critical point, the human element, the cultural shift. And you mentioned earlier a fascinating problem emerging alongside official adoption, something called shadow AI. Can you elaborate on that? What is it, and how does it actually impact the pace of official sanctioned AI adoption in companies?
Yes, shadow AI. It's a significant, though often unspoken, driver, almost an accelerant for official enterprise AI adoption. It's very similar to the shadow IT problem companies faced years ago, where employees would start using unauthorized cloud software like Dropbox or Slack before the company officially approved them.
People just using tools they find helpful, bypassing IT.
Exactly. Today, the widespread availability of powerful, incredibly easy-to-use public AI tools, think ChatGPT, Gemini, various image generators, summarization tools, means that employees who are naturally keen to boost their own personal productivity, or frankly, just curious to experiment, are increasingly using these unsanctioned public AI applications for work-related tasks,
Without permission.
often without permission, or even awareness from IT or legal. And while that's understandable from an individual's perspective, they just want to get their job done faster. This behavior creates enormous potential data security and compliance risks for the organization. Well, sensitive corporate information, maybe confidential customer data, internal strategy documents, proprietary code snippets might be accidentally pasted into these public models.
Yeah.
That data then leaves the company's secure environment, potentially gets stored on third-party servers, maybe even used to train future versions of the public model, completely outside the company's control or visibility. This creates huge risks around intellectual property leakage, violating data privacy regulations like GDPR, or breaking confidentiality agreements.
That's a huge liability.
Massive. And this growing risk, this fear of uncontrolled shadow AI usage, provides a powerful, almost urgent incentive for corporate IT and security leaders to accelerate the rollout and adoption of official enterprise-grade AI platforms. Things like Microsoft 365 Copilot, ChatGPT Enterprise, Google Workspace, Duet AI.
The official lockdown versions.
Exactly. The goal of these official corporate rollouts isn't just about capturing productivity gains anymore. It's also, critically, about regaining control, ensuring regulatory compliance, managing risk, and obtaining complete visibility into how AI is actually being used across the organization. It's a pragmatic, risk mitigation response to the uncontrolled proliferation of powerful AI tools that are now available to everyone.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, building on that idea of enterprise adoption, while the general AI platforms get most of the headlines, it sounds like some of the most profound, maybe truly transformative impacts are happening quietly within specific industries. This concept of vertical AI, where AI is tailored to solve unique, often incredibly high-stakes problems in sectors like healthcare or finance, this seems to be where AI's specialized power really shines.
That's a crucial insight, and I think it's often overlooked in the broader conversation. The real deep revolution might be happening more quietly within these specific vertical sectors where the problems are complex and the value of solving them is immense. Take healthcare, for instance. AI is evolving incredibly rapidly there. It's moving from being just a peripheral support tool to becoming a core component of clinical strategy, diagnostics, and even patient care delivery.
What kind of applications are we seeing emerge?
We're seeing significant interest and early deployments of using agentic AI principles to assist clinicians with diagnostics, acting almost like an intelligent second opinion, analyzing medical images or patient histories for subtle patterns. Also using AI to automate incredibly complex administrative tasks, things like patient scheduling optimization, medical billing and coding, managing insurance pre-authorizations, which currently consume a huge amount of clinician and administrative time.
Freeing up doctors and nurses to focus on patients.
That's the goal. There are also increasingly sophisticated AI models being developed for disease detection, particularly in areas like oncology or ophthalmology, based on analyzing scans, and for personalized treatment planning, recommending therapies based on a patient's specific genetic makeup or medical history, processing vast amounts of data that no single human could possibly synthesize.
And what about wearables?
That's another huge area. Wearable AI technology smartwatches, continuous glucose monitors, even smart clothing is enabling continuous, real-time monitoring of patient vital signs and activity levels. This is fundamentally shifting healthcare away from a reactive treat-you-when-you-get-sick model towards a much more proactive, preventative, and predictive approach, spotting potential issues before they become critical.
And even drug discovery, AI is impacting that too.
Massively. This is one of the highest value areas. AI startups like Pathos AI, for example, are using advanced machine learning models to dramatically accelerate the incredibly slow and expensive process of drug research and development. They can simulate molecular interactions, predict drug efficacy, identify potential candidates from millions of possibilities, essentially reducing years of traditional lab work down to months or even weeks in some cases. And Pathos recently achieved unicorn status, a billion-dollar valuation, which is incredibly rare for an early-stage biotech company, highlighting the immense perceived value here.
Okay, healthcare is fascinating. What about the financial sector? That seems like another area ripe for AI, given the sheer volume of data, the complexity, and the need for speed and accuracy.
Absolutely. The financial services industry was actually one of the earliest adopters of AI and machine learning, and they continue to push the boundaries. A major focus now is on hyper-automation of core, often very repetitive back-office processes. Things like invoice processing, expense report categorization, account reconciliation, tasks that are traditionally very manual, labor-intensive, and unfortunately prone to human error. AI can do these much faster and more accurately.
Beyond just automation.
Oh, yes. They're heavily using predictive analytics for much more dynamic strategic planning. AI models can simulate market shifts, predict credit risk, optimize investment portfolios, allowing firms to make faster, more informed decisions in rapidly changing markets. Sophisticated AI algorithms are also absolutely crucial now for real-time fraud detection. They can analyze millions of transactions per second, identifying anomalous patterns indicative of fraud like credit card skimming or money laundering instantaneously. That's a task that's simply impossible for human analysts to do at that scale and speed.
Are there other emerging trends in finance AI?
An interesting one is the convergence of AI with blockchain technology. There's exploration into using this combination to create more secure, more transparent, and more easily auditable transaction systems, particularly for things like trade finance or regulatory reporting.
And that links back to the need for trust and explainability you mentioned earlier.
Critically, as AI's role in financial decision-making grows from loan approvals to investment strategies, explainable AI, or XAI, is becoming absolutely non-negotiable. Financial institutions operate under incredibly strict regulatory scrutiny. They must be able to understand, justify, and document every significant AI-driven decision to regulators, auditors, and their clients. Transparency isn't optional. It's a fundamental requirement for operating in this sector.
Okay, healthcare, finance. What about cybersecurity? That feels like a classic double-edged sword when it comes to AI. It offers incredible defensive capabilities, but presumably it also empowers the attackers.
It truly is a dual-use technology in the cybersecurity domain, maybe more so than in any other field. It's a constant arms race. On the defensive side, security teams are increasingly relying on AI to cope with the sheer volume and sophistication of modern threats. AI can analyze vast amounts of network traffic, log files, and threat intelligence feeds in real time, detecting subtle patterns of malicious activity, identifying zero-day exploits, and neutralizing threats much faster than human analysts ever could alone. It's becoming essential for protecting critical infrastructure.
But the flip side.
The flip side is that the bad actors, the cybercriminals and state-sponsored groups, are also leveraging generative AI to become much more effective and efficient. They're using AI to create increasingly sophisticated polymorphic malware that can constantly change its code to evade detection. They're automating the creation of highly convincing, personalized phishing emails at massive scale. They're developing adaptive ransomware attacks.
And you mentioned phishing.
Yes, that's a particularly scary recent development. The rise of incredibly realistic AI-powered voice synthesis, voice cloning, has given birth to a terrifying new threat vector known as vishing, or voice phishing. Attackers can use AI-generated voices to convincingly impersonate trusted individuals, maybe a CEO instructing an employee to make an urgent wire transfer, or a family member supposedly in distress asking for money. It makes it incredibly harder for people to discern legitimate calls from sophisticated scams. It weaponizes trust using technology.
That's deeply unsettling, looking at the bigger economic picture across all these industries, healthcare, finance, manufacturing, retail. The scale of transformation predicted is just immense, right?
The long-term projections are truly staggering. Accenture, for instance, released projections for the potential economic value added by AI by the year 2035 across various sectors.
What kind of numbers are we talking?
Just to give a few examples.
Yeah.
In manufacturing, they project AI could add $3.78 trillion in value globally. In wholesale and retail, $2.23 trillion. Professional services, $1.85 trillion. Financial services, $1.15 trillion. Trillions. These numbers, even if they're only directionally accurate, highlight the absolutely immense scale of the economic transformation that AI is expected to drive over the next decade. We are still in the very early innings of this.
And what does all this deep integration, this vertical specialization across industries mean for the talent landscape, for jobs, for skills? It sounds like we need a fundamentally new kind of professional emerging.
Absolutely. The deep integration of AI into these specialized fields is fundamentally reshaping workforce needs and the definition of valuable skills. It's creating incredibly strong demand, not just for traditional data scientists or AI researchers, but for a new breed of professional, the hybrid expert.
Hybrid expert meaning?
These are individuals who combine deep existing domain knowledge expertise in medicine, finance, law, engineering, education, you name it, with the technical AI expertise needed to effectively deploy, manage, interpret, and even help train the AI tools relevant to their specific field. It's about bridging that crucial gap between the industry's practical needs and the technology's capabilities. They speak both languages.
Is there evidence this demand is real?
Oh, yes. A Q2 2025 market report, specifically looking at the financial sector, for example, noted a remarkable 40% year-over-year increase in job postings, explicitly requiring these specialized hybrid skill sets roles, asking for expertise in both finance and AI machine learning data science. And that's likely a leading indicator of a much broader shift that will ripple across all knowledge-based sectors.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener, maybe thinking about your own career or your team?
It means the most valuable employees, the ones most likely to thrive in the age of AI, will be those who can act as that bridge. Those who can combine their hard-earned professional discipline and experience with an understanding of how these powerful new technologies can augment their work, solve problems in their field, and create new value. This reality necessitates a whole new approach to professional education, continuous career development, and massive internal upskilling and reskilling programs within organizations. It's not just about learning to use the tools. It's about learning how to integrate them strategically into your domain expertise. It's human intelligence augmented by artificial intelligence.
That's a really powerful framing. Okay, let's talk about the money flowing into all this. The AI sector has been arguably the dominant force in global venture capital and M&A for a while now. Are we still seeing those massive funding rounds? Is the capital still concentrating? It felt almost like a frenzy for a bit.
The frenzy might have calmed slightly from its absolute peak, but AI absolutely remained the primary focus for global investors in Q2 2025. It was still described in reports as another blockbuster quarter for funding. By some estimates, around $40 billion was directed into the AI sector during this period alone. To put that in perspective, that represented approximately 45%, nearly half of all global venture capital funding across all sectors, just flowing into AI.
Half of all VC money into one sector. That's incredible concentration.
It is, however, a critical nuance here is that this capital is not being distributed evenly across the board. There's a very clear accelerating trend toward concentration of that capital into a relatively small number of elite, usually late-stage companies. Companies that have already demonstrated significant market traction, possess unique data sets, or have achieved clear technological breakthroughs.
So the rich get richer, in a sense.
In the VC world, very much so right now. The most striking example from Q2 was Scale AI. They provide essential data labeling and validation services for training AI models. They raised a monumental $14.3 billion funding round.
14 billion in one round.
Yes. That single round accounted for nearly a third of all U.S. venture capital funding across all sectors in that entire quarter. Just one company.
Unbelievable.
And reflecting this trend, the vast majority of the world's fastest-growing private companies, the so-called unicorns, valued at over $1 billion, are now AI players. It's become a very top-heavy investment landscape, favoring the established leaders or those providing critical infrastructure.
And what about mergers and acquisitions? Are the tech giants still actively buying up AI startups, or are they focusing more on building capabilities in-house now?
M&A activity is definitely on the rise and is becoming an increasingly crucial exit path for successful AI startups, especially in a market where initial public offerings, IPOs, remain somewhat sluggish compared to previous booms. And yes, the established tech giants have been incredibly active acquirers. OpenAI, interestingly, was noted as leading the M&A charge in Q2. They made several strategic purchases.
Any notable examples?
The big one that really raised eyebrows was OpenAI's acquisition of I.O., the secretive AI hardware startup founded by legendary Apple designer Jony Ive and OpenAI's own CEO, Sam Altman. The reported price tag was around $6.5 billion.
Buying a hardware company, that seems like a departure for OpenAI.
It absolutely signals a clear strategic intent to expand beyond pure software and algorithms into physical devices. Devices that can bring AI capabilities directly into our lives in new form factors, much like Apple did with the iPhone for mobile computing. It's potentially moved towards owning the entire AI user experience, from the underlying silicon all the way up to the interface and the application.
So, looking at these massive funding rounds like Scale AI's and strategic M&A like OpenAI buying a hardware company, it suggests investors aren't just throwing money blindly at any company with AI in its name anymore, right? There seems to be a very clear strategic shift in where they believe long-term defensible value will actually be created, maybe moving away from just the foundational models themselves.
That's exactly right. A deeper analysis of these investment and acquisition patterns reveals a significant strategic shift in investor thinking. While companies building the core foundational models, the GPTs, the Geminis obviously continue to attract significant capital, the most substantial investment flows and the highest valuations seem to be increasingly directed towards two other distinct types of companies.
Okay, what are those two types?
First, companies that provide the essential infrastructure and services needed for AI development and deployment. These are the so-called picks and shovels companies of the AI gold rush.
Like Scale AI providing data labeling.
Precisely. Scale AI's record-breaking funding round is the prime example. They provide critical, often labor-intensive data labeling, curation, and validation services that are absolutely necessary to train, fine-tune, and evaluate large-scale AI models. They're enabling the whole ecosystem. Investors are betting that these infrastructure providers will capture durable value regardless of which specific AI model wins out.
Okay, that's the picks and shovels play. What's the second area attracting big money?
The second area is established companies that already own massive distribution channels to millions or even billions of end users.
Companies with huge existing user bases.
Exactly. Think about Grammarly, the writing assistant tool. They already have a massive, loyal user base measured in the hundreds of millions. They recently secured a reported $1 billion investment specifically to integrate more advanced generative AI capabilities deeply into their existing products.
So the bet there is that distribution trumps the core tech.
The bet is that it's easier and potentially more profitable to bring advanced AI to an existing massive user base than it is for a pure AI startup to build that user base from scratch. This suggests a growing belief among sophisticated investors that the most durable competitive advantages in the AI era may not actually lie in the core AI models themselves, which arguably could eventually become somewhat commoditized as more players enter the field.
So where does the advantage lie?
It may lie more defensively in owning the unique, proprietary data needed to train specialized models, controlling the critical tools and platforms that enable AI development and deployment, like Skill AI, or belonging to those established companies that can rapidly leverage AI to serve millions of their existing customers more effectively and lock them into their ecosystem, like Grammarly or Microsoft or Google. It's about data, infrastructure, and distribution, not just the algorithm itself.
That makes strategic sense. Empowering all of this, the models, the applications, the data processing is that foundational layer we keep touching on. The infrastructure, the chips, the hardware, the demand for AI compute seems absolutely insatiable, fueling an unprecedented boom in this sector, unlike anything we've seen in decades. Indeed, it all runs on silicon, ultimately. And at the absolute heart of this current boom is the relentless, insatiable demand for semiconductors, for chips. That push we talk about for more advanced AI reasoning capabilities, the need to train and run ever larger, more complex models, it requires staggering amounts of raw computing power. And that directly translates into enormous accelerating demand for specialized AI chips.
Is it still all about GPUs?
GPUs, or graphics processing units originally designed for video games, have certainly been the workhorse of the AI revolution so far, and they continue to be incredibly important and in high demand. However, this intense demand has also ignited a major strategic debate and a wave of investment within the industry regarding the best approach to hardware acceleration for AI.
What's the debate? GPUs versus what?
It's increasingly GPUs versus custom-designed ASICs, application-specific integrated circuits.
ASICs, meaning chips designed for one specific job.
Exactly. These are specialized chips tailored precisely for particular AI tasks, like running inference efficiently, making predictions with a trained model, or accelerating specific types of training algorithms. The potential advantage is that, for that specific task, an ASIC can offer significantly higher performance and much better energy efficiency compared to a more general-purpose GPU. Google's TPUs, tensor processing units, are a well-known example.
So it's a trade-off, flexibility versus optimized performance.
It's exactly that trade-off. GPUs offer more flexibility for a wider range of tasks in research, while ASICs promise superior performance and efficiency for specific high-volume workloads once those workloads are well understood and standardized. We're seeing companies invest heavily in both approaches.
And this relentless demand for more chips, more compute power, it's directly fueling this massive, almost dizzying expansion of data center infrastructure globally, isn't it? It feels like reports of new gigantic data centers being built are coming out constantly.
It absolutely is. The scale of the build-out is hard to comprehend. The world's largest technology companies, the hyperscalers like Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Meta, are making their largest ever capital expenditures in history. And the vast majority of those funds are being directed squarely towards scaling up their AI data center capacity.
Any specific numbers that stand out?
Well, Microsoft, for example, publicly announced an astonishing $80 billion AI-focused capital expenditure target for its fiscal year 2025 alone.
$80 billion in 1 year on data centers.
Just think about that number. It's more than the annual GDP of many countries. This level of investment, while clearly deemed absolutely necessary by these companies to maintain a competitive edge in the global AI race, is undeniably placing significant short-term pressure on their corporate profit margins. They are literally pouring money into building the fundamental compute infrastructure for the future, knowing that without that capacity, they simply cannot compete. It's an incredibly expensive ante to even play in the high-stakes AI game.
That's an enormous investment in physical infrastructure. And it immediately brings up a major concern, one that's definitely gaining more public attention and scrutiny. Sustainability, all that compute power, all those servers packed into buildings. They must consume an absolutely incredible amount of energy and often overlooked water, especially for cooling.
You're absolutely right to raise that. The sheer scale of this global data center build-out has thrust the issue of environmental sustainability directly into the spotlight. It's no longer a secondary concern. It's becoming a primary challenge for the industry and for society. The enormous and rapidly growing energy consumption required to power these next-generation AI data centers is a major issue. Some credible estimates suggest that the AI sector's electricity consumption could soon rival that of entire small countries. And then there's the massive water consumption, particularly for traditional cooling systems in many existing data centers. This is becoming a huge concern, especially in water-stressed regions where many data centers are located.
So how is the industry responding? Are they just building more power plants, or are they trying to make the infrastructure itself more sustainable?
They're trying to do both, but there's definitely a growing focus on making the infrastructure itself more efficient and sustainable. Leading companies are making significant and very public investments in sustainable data center design and operations. Microsoft, for example, has been quite vocal about its initiatives. They're pioneering the use of advanced zero-water cooling systems in some new facilities. They're constructing new data centers using lower carbon materials like near-zero carbon steel. And critically, they're investing heavily in securing massive amounts of new carbon-free energy sources, signing huge contracts for wind and solar power, exploring geothermal energy, and even investigating the potential of using small modular nuclear reactors, SMRs, to provide clean, reliable power directly to their data center campuses.
So it's a multi-pronged approach to try and mitigate that huge environmental footprint.
It has to be. It's a proactive effort driven partly by genuine environmental concern, partly by regulatory pressure, and partly by pure economics. Energy is a huge operating cost, and water scarcity is a growing risk factor. They need to make this expansion sustainable, both environmentally and financially.
And beyond these massive centralized data centers, are we seeing new hardware form factors emerging specifically for AI, things that people might actually interact with more directly, not just servers hidden away?
Yes, definitely. While the data center build-out gets a lot of attention because of the scale and cost, this intense focus on the physical layer of AI is also spurring significant interest and investment in new hardware form factors beyond just servers and chips. The market for wearable AI devices, for example, think advanced smart glasses with AI capabilities, sophisticated earbuds with real-time translation or AI coaching, maybe even health monitoring rings, that market is projected to reach something like $180 billion globally in 2025. It's growing very rapidly, and interest in AI-powered robotics continues to grow significantly, moving beyond the traditional caged-off industrial robots in factories toward more collaborative robots, cobots, working alongside humans, and even into potential consumer or service robot applications.
And OpenAI buying that hardware startup fits into this picture.
Perfectly. OpenAI's strategic acquisition of Joni's hardware company underscores a serious ambition among the leading AI labs to expand beyond just writing clever software and building large models. They want to get into designing and potentially manufacturing physical devices that can interact with the real world, collect unique data through sensors, and deliver AI experiences in a much more tangible, integrated way. It's about making AI not just a disembodied voice or text on a screen, but potentially a physical presence or assistant in our lives.
So putting this all together, the chip demand, the data center boom, the energy needs, the new hardware, it sounds like it's not just about silicon anymore. You use the term energy AI nexus. It sounds like energy itself is becoming a core strategic component, maybe as important as the chips themselves. What does that mean for the future geography of AI?
Precisely. The immense and still rapidly escalating energy requirements of the entire AI industry are forging a new, absolutely critical strategic link between the technology sector and the energy infrastructure sector. This creates what we can increasingly call the energy AI nexus.
Energy AI nexus.
What this means, practically, is that the physical location of future large-scale AI data centers will increasingly be determined not just by factors like proximity to users or the availability of high-speed fiber optic cables, but fundamentally, perhaps primarily, by the availability of abundant, reliable, and preferably cheap green energy.
So data centers will follow the power.
Increasingly, yes. This dynamic helps explain the recent emergence of entirely new kinds of companies, like the startup Exawatt. Their whole business model is focused on building new, dedicated energy infrastructure, essentially bespoke power plants, specifically to serve the massive power needs of AI data centers. It also helps explain government initiatives, like the European Union's Industrial Decarbonization Bank, which aims to provide funding for the development of clean energy technologies and infrastructure that can support this new waves of computational demand sustainably.
The implications seem profound.
They really are. In this new paradigm, access to abundant, affordable, and ideally clean energy is rapidly becoming as critical a national strategic resource as access to advanced semiconductor manufacturing or a pool of skilled AI talent. Nations and regions around the world that can successfully provide that abundant, reliable, affordable power will hold a significant competitive advantage in the global race for AI dominance. It fundamentally makes national energy policy a core component of national AI strategy. It's a geopolitical shift being driven quite literally by kilowatt hours.
Wow, that really connects the dots in a new way. Okay, all these rapid technological and economic shifts we've been discussing, they're obviously not happening in a vacuum. They're unfolding within a broader societal context. So for our final section, let's try to address some of those critical human dimensions of the AI revolution. We need to talk about the urgent need for governance and ethics, the fundamental reshaping of work, and maybe even how AI is starting to impact our most personal human connections.
Absolutely. As the power, the pervasiveness, and the adoption of artificial intelligence continue to grow exponentially, so too do the public, governmental, and even internal corporate concerns about its potential risks and unintended consequences. The past quarter, Q2 2025, has definitely seen an intensification of the global conversation around AI governance, around ethics, and around the increasingly pressing need for sensible regulation.
What are the key pressure points? What are the main topics being debated?
The most prominent points of discussion globally revolve around issues like the potential for algorithmic bias to perpetuate or even amplify societal inequalities, the challenge of tackling the pervasive spread of misinformation and disinformation, particularly through AI-generated deepfakes, the crucial need to protect personal data privacy in an era of massive data collection for training models, and this overarching need for greater transparency and accountability in how complex AI systems actually arrive at their decisions, especially when those decisions have significant impacts on people's lives. These aren't just abstract academic concerns anymore. They're becoming very real, tangible problems that demand concrete solutions.
And what are the top ethical concerns that seem to be animating public discourse right now? It feels like we're constantly hearing about new dangers or dilemmas.
From the public perspective, several concerns consistently rise to the top. First, the malicious use of generative AI to create those highly convincing fake videos, fake audio recordings used for targeted misinformation campaigns, political destabilization, online harassment, or even sophisticated fraud. That's a huge worry. Second, the fundamental truthfulness or reliability of AI models themselves remains a major concern. That tendency we discussed for them to hallucinate, confidently presenting false or nonsensical information as fact, seriously undermines public trust.
People don't know what to believe.
Exactly. And third, significant research continues to highlight the persistence and sometimes amplification of existing societal biases related to race, gender, age, other characteristics within large language models. This happens because the models are trained on vast amounts of historical text and data from the internet, which unfortunately reflects our existing societal prejudices. This can lead to discriminatory outputs, unfair treatment, and the potential for generating toxic or harmful content if these systems aren't very carefully designed, tested, and monitored. These ethical challenges are right at the forefront of the public's mind, and they represent a serious ongoing challenge for AI developers and deployers.
So how are the key players, corporations, governments actually responding to these growing concerns? It seems like everyone acknowledges the problems, but finding solutions is harder. Are we seeing concrete actions?
We are seeing actions, yes, though perhaps at different speeds and with different philosophies guiding them. AI governance and ethics have definitely become major focus areas within organizations. Many large companies are now actively developing internal policies, ethical review boards, responsible AI frameworks, and investing in new tools and techniques designed to detect and mitigate bias in their models or ensure fairness in their outputs. Employee training on responsible AI use is also becoming more common.
So internal efforts. What about externally?
Externally, we're seeing some AI labs themselves become more proactive, perhaps realizing that waiting for regulation might lead to unfavorable outcomes. In the United States, for example, after a proposed federal moratorium on new state-level AI laws failed to gain traction, some leading AI companies, like Anthropic, actually began to proactively lobby for new federal transparency regulations. Their argument was that a confusing patchwork of 50 different state laws would be unmanageable for the industry, and a clear federal standard would be preferable, even if it imposes requirements.
Interesting. Advocating for regulation.
It shows a maturing of the industry, perhaps. Major technology firms like Google are also very publicly emphasizing their commitment to responsible AI integration and governance in their reports and communications. And they're investing heavily in AI safety research, trying to build more robust and controllable systems. Meanwhile, the legal front is heating up. The use of vast amounts of potentially copyrighted data scraped from the web to train these massive AI models has sparked a series of high-profile, potentially landmark lawsuits against major AI companies like Meta, OpenAI, and Perplexity AI. These lawsuits, brought by authors, artists, and news organizations, are creating critical legal battlegrounds that will ultimately shape the future of intellectual property law, data rights, and the definition of fair use in the AI era. The outcomes could have huge financial implications for the industry.
So, on the regulatory front specifically, you mentioned different approaches. It sounds like we're seeing a kind of two-speed global regulatory landscape emerge, with different major regions taking fundamentally different paths. How is this divergence playing out, and what does it mean for companies trying to operate globally?
Yes, there's a very clear and significant divergence in regulatory philosophy and approach, particularly between the European Union and the United States. On one hand, you have the EU's comprehensive, generally top-down approach. This culminated in the finalization and ongoing implementation of the EU AI Act. This act is quite prescriptive. It categorizes AI systems based on their perceived risk level from minimal risk to unacceptable risk, and sets increasingly strict requirements for transparency, data governance, human oversight, and robustness depending on the risk category. High-risk systems face very significant compliance burdens.
Okay, that's the EU's detailed approach. What about the US?
The U.S., in contrast, is taking a much more fragmented, generally lighter touch, and more industry-influenced approach. Regulation is happening more sector by sector, often through existing regulatory agencies adapting their rules, and significantly state by state. There's a general prioritization of fostering innovation, often leading to less prescriptive rules compared to the EU. California is often leading with its own initiatives, but there's no single comprehensive federal AI law like the EU's Act.
What are the consequences of this divergence for global companies?
It creates a complex and challenging compliance environment. The EU's AI Act, much like its GDPR data privacy regulation did, is widely expected to set a de facto global standard. Why? Because many global companies will likely find it easier to build their AI systems to meet the strictest requirements, the EU's, and apply that standard globally rather than trying to maintain different versions for different markets. This is known as the Brussels effect.
So the EU rules could impact companies even if they don't have many EU customers.
Potentially, yes, if they adopt it as their global baseline. The U.S. approach, on the other hand, while potentially allowing for faster, less constrained innovation in the short term, creates significant regulatory uncertainty for businesses. They face the prospect of navigating a confusing patchwork of potentially conflicting state-level rules, which makes it difficult and expensive to develop and deploy AI products consistently nationwide.
So it's a major strategic headache.
Absolutely. Navigating this regulatory divergence, deciding which standards to design for, managing compliance across different jurisdictions will be a major strategic, legal, and operational challenge for all global AI players in the coming years.
Okay, shifting gears slightly, but still on the human impact, let's talk about the future of work. This is perhaps the single most intensely searched for, debated, and frankly anxiety-inducing topic related to AI globally. The narrative does seem to be shifting somewhat, doesn't it? Maybe moving away from the initial simplistic fear of robots taking all the jobs towards a more nuanced view of AI as a co-pilot or a collaborative partner for human workers. What's the reality shaping up there?
That narrative shift is definitely happening, yes. And the potential for significant productivity enhancement is, without doubt, a primary, almost irresistible driver of enterprise AI adoption. Some forecasts, like one we saw cited, suggest that AI could potentially improve overall employee productivity by as much as 40% in the coming years. And a recent survey of businesses already implementing AI tools found that they are reporting savings for the average employee of around 2.5 hours per day time reclaimed from mundane, repetitive tasks.
2.5 hours a day. That's huge if it's real.
It's a significant claim. And the dominant model for how AI is being implemented in the workplace today is indeed this co-pilot concept. Think of an intelligent assistant integrated directly into the software tools employees already use: email, word processors, spreadsheets, coding environments. This co-pilot is designed primarily to handle the repetitive, often tedious tasks: sifting through and summarizing emails, drafting initial versions of documents or reports, taking meaty notes and identifying action items, generating simple code snippets. The stated goal is generally to augment the human worker, freeing them up to focus on higher value, more complex, more creative, strategic, and inherently human work that requires critical thinking, judgment, and interpersonal skills. It's presented largely as augmentation, not replacement, at least for now in most knowledge work roles.
Okay, but despite all these impressive reports of individual productivity gains saving hours per day, there seems to be a persistent challenge, right? A challenge in actually measuring these gains rigorously across entire organizations or seeing them translate into those big economy-wide productivity spikes that economists look for in the national statistics. Why is there this disconnect?
It's a fascinating paradox, and economists are actively debating it. Despite the widespread belief in these individual productivity gains and the anecdotal reports from businesses, very few companies seem to be rigorously measuring these impacts at an organizational level yet. Or, if they are, they're not widely sharing the methodologies or results. There's a significant disconnect between the reported efficiency improvements at the individual task level, I can write emails faster now, and a current lack of clear evidence of things like mass layoffs attributed directly to AI productivity, or those dramatic productivity growth spikes appearing in broader macroeconomic data.
So why might that be?
There are several theories. It could be that the gains are real, but are currently being absorbed in other ways, maybe improving quality or allowing people to do more tasks rather than fewer hours. It could be that we're still in a very early phase of adoption, and these gains take time to aggregate and show up in national statistics. It could be that measurement itself is incredibly difficult, especially for knowledge work where output is hard to quantify. Or perhaps some of the initial claims were simply overly optimistic. But what is undeniably clear from all this, and perhaps the most critical takeaway for organizations and for you listening, what stands out is the absolute paramount importance of workforce development. Investing in AI literacy programs, internal upskilling and reskilling initiatives, these are no longer optional. They have become top strategic imperatives for nearly every organization that wants to successfully navigate this transition and actually capitalize on the potential of AI. Ensuring their employees are equipped not just to use these new tools, but to work effectively alongside them is crucial.
That makes sense. Skills become key. And there's also this intriguing, maybe slightly concerning concept you touched on earlier related to the changing structure of work, the middle manager squeeze. What exactly is that, and why are middle managers potentially particularly vulnerable, or conversely, perhaps ripe for fundamental transformation in their roles due to AI?
It's a subtle but potentially profound effect that AI seems poised to have on the traditional corporate hierarchy. AI, as we've discussed, is proving to be exceptionally good at two specific things. One, automating many of the routine, data-heavy, or process-driven tasks, often performed by individual contributors at the front lines. Think generating standard reports, doing initial data analysis, drafting routine communications. Two, providing high-level, synthesized data analysis and insights directly to senior leadership, helping them make faster, more informed strategic decisions, maybe bypassing some traditional reporting layers.
Okay, good at the bottom and the top. Where does that leave the middle?
Well, AI is currently far less adept at replicating the uniquely human-centric, often softer, skills and tasks that have traditionally defined a large part of the middle manager's role. Things like mentoring junior employees and fostering their development, navigating complex interpersonal team dynamics and resolving conflicts, providing nuanced, context-aware feedback, fostering collaboration and creativity within a team, and building and maintaining a positive team culture. These are deeply human skills requiring empathy, emotional intelligence, judgment, and experience.
Things AI struggles with.
Exactly. So the potential squeeze comes from this. As individual workers become more productive and somewhat more autonomous using their AI co-pilots, and as senior executives get better, faster insights directly from AI-powered analytics dashboards. The traditional value proposition of the middle manager, often acting primarily as an information conduit upwards, a task delegator downwards, and a process supervisor may start to diminish.
They get squeezed from both sides.
Potentially, yes. The pressure on them to clearly justify their unique value add will likely intensify. Some recent analysis has described this group as feeling overloaded, underrated, and on the edge of reinvention. Their roles will almost certainly need to evolve dramatically.
Evolve?
Shifting away from being primarily information relays and project managers and more towards becoming expert coaches, mentors, strategic problem solvers for their teams, and cultivators of talent and culture, focusing on those inherently human leadership skills that AI cannot easily replicate. It represents a crucial evolution for organizations to manage proactively, as it impacts the very fabric of how teams function, collaborate, and develop.
That's a really important point about skill shifting. Okay, finally, let's explore something a bit different but equally fascinating. The growing interest in very personal, almost humanistic applications of AI. It seems AI is moving beyond just work and productivity and starting to touch on areas like creativity, companionship, and even our mental well-being. This feels like a very different side of the AI story.
It really is, and it's perhaps one of the most surprising yet fastest growing use cases for AI to emerge. It demonstrates that technologies reach deep into our personal and emotional lives for better or worse. In recent user surveys, categories like therapy and companionship consistently rank as top use cases for general-purpose AI chatbots. People are actively turning to AI like ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude for emotional support to help them organize their personal lives, to brainstorm solutions to personal problems, and even, sometimes, for guidance on finding purpose or navigating difficult life decisions.
Using AI as a confidant, almost.
In a way, yes. And this trend is actually being actively encouraged, or at least acknowledged and facilitated, by the technology companies themselves. Microsoft, for example, explicitly positions its Copilot not just as a productivity tool, but as an AI companion designed to support users throughout their day, helping with tasks, sure, but also capable of offering empathetic-sounding responses and engaging in more personal conversation. It's a clear recognition of AI's potential, or at least users' desire, to use to address feelings of loneliness or to seek accessible, non-judgmental support.
And what about AI for creativity and entertainment? That seems absolutely massive right now. From generating music to creating art, it feels like it's democratizing content creation in a huge way.
Immensely so. The sheer popularity of the image, music, and video generation tools we discussed earlier demonstrates a massive global appetite for using AI not just for consumption, but for active artistic expression and simple fun. It allows individuals who may not have traditional artistic skills or training to suddenly create sophisticated, unique content, generate logos for a project, compose original background music for a video, design virtual characters, illustrate stories. The barrier to creation has been lowered dramatically.
And it's not just amateurs using it.
Not at all. This trend has reached even the highest levels of professional content creation. We saw reports, for example, that figures like the incredibly popular YouTuber Mr. Beast are apparently using AI tools, possibly for things like generating and A/B testing different video thumbnail designs to maximize clicks. It indicates AI is becoming a strategic tool even for top creators looking for an edge. And beyond pure entertainment, AI is also making significant inroads into education and personal development. Enhanced learning and explore interests also consistently rank as top AI use cases in surveys.
How is it being used in education?
We're seeing applications like AI tutors, providing personalized learning paths tailored to individual student needs and paces, systems that can help automate the often burdensome task of grading assignments, freeing up teacher time, and the availability of 247 virtual tutors that can answer student questions or explain concepts on demand. The goal is to make learning more accessible, more engaging, and more personalized.
This all sounds potentially very positive, but it also brings us to this slightly unsettling idea that's been termed the AI intimacy paradox. It's fascinating that people are turning to AI for companionship, but for many, it also feels a bit weird, maybe even concerning.
It absolutely does. The rapid rise of AI being used for emotional support and companionship is creating a complex, rapidly evolving social phenomenon with potentially profound implications for the future of human connection. On the one hand, as we noted, these AI companions can genuinely provide a valuable outlet for individuals. They might help alleviate loneliness, especially for isolated populations. They can offer a non-judgmental space for people to express themselves or explore thoughts and feelings without fear of social repercussions. And they offer a sense of constant availability that human relationships, realistically, often cannot match. There are potential benefits there.
But the paradox part, the concerns.
The concerns are deep. This trend raises fundamental, maybe uncomfortable questions about the very nature of human connection itself. What does it mean to form an emotional attachment to a machine? How authentic can that bond be? What are the long-term psychological effects? And what are the ethics of creating and deploying technologies designed to foster scalable emotional bonds with non-sentient entities?
Yeah, the vision floated by some tech leaders, like Mark Zuckerberg, suggesting a future where many of our friends are AI chatbots. That definitely raises eyebrows. Is it a helpful solution to a social need, or is it a sign of something deeply dystopian?
That's the core of the debate. Some see it as a pragmatic, potentially beneficial solution to widespread loneliness and a lack of accessible mental health support. Others view it with deep concern, worrying it could lead to further social isolation, a potential devaluing of authentic human relationships, or even emotional manipulation if not developed and deployed responsibly. And as the technology progresses, as companies actively work to develop AI with greater emotional intelligence, making the conversations feel more fluid, more natural, more empathetic, this emerging social trend is absolutely set to become a major area of ongoing ethical debate, intense psychological study, and widespread public discussion. It's forcing us as a society to really grapple with and perhaps redefine what intimacy, friendship, and companionship truly mean in an increasingly digital and artificially intelligent age.
That's a profound thought to end on. So to try and wrap up everything we've dived into today, the AI landscape in mid-2025, it's clearly defined by this sense of maturation, right? We've moved decisively from that initial broad, generalized hype into a much more focused, multi-front battle. A battle for tangible value, for strategic control, for defining the future. And while public attention might still be captivated by the latest cool generative tool or the ever-improving capabilities, it sounds like the deeper, maybe more consequential trends are really unfolding elsewhere in enterprise boardrooms, figuring out ROI, in those massive venture capital funding rounds, concentrating capital, and in that relentless, expensive race to build the foundational infrastructure that will power this entire next decade of innovation.
That's a perfect summary. Our analysis of these top 12 global AI topics from Q2 really reveals 4 key battlegrounds, as you called them earlier, that will undeniably define the industry's trajectory over, say, the next 12 to 18 months.
Okay, let's recap those 4 battlegrounds.
First, there's the platform war. That intense race we discussed to build the dominant operating system, the core ecosystem, for the coming era of agentic AI. Whoever wins that controls where the economic value gets created and how AI applications are ultimately distributed. It's about owning the future app store, but for AI agents.
Battleground 1, platform war. Got it.
Second, we have the efficiency war. That critical struggle to drive down the immense model tax, the cost of training, and more importantly, running large-scale AI. This battle is forcing that market bifurcation we talked about, splitting into premium frontier models versus cost-effective specialized models, and it's making profitability and sustainability economics absolutely central to every AI strategy now. You can't just burn cash forever.
Battleground 2, efficiency war. Makes sense.
Third is the trust war. This is the critical competition to build AI systems that are not just powerful, but also transparent, reliable, secure, and fair. As AI becomes more deeply integrated into high-stakes industries and our daily lives, the ability to provide auditable, explainable reasoning, to mitigate bias, to ensure safety, that will become a more critical differentiator than raw capability alone. Trust is the foundation.
Battleground 3, trust war. Crucial.
And finally, number 4, there's the talent war, that ongoing intensifying global search for a new class of hybrid experts, those individuals who can effectively bridge deep domain knowledge in fields like medicine, finance, or engineering with the technical AI capability needed to apply it effectively. The companies, and indeed the economies, that can successfully cultivate, attract, and leverage this scarce hybrid talent will hold a decisive competitive advantage.
Battleground 4, talent war. So platform, efficiency, trust, and talent. Those are the key fronts.
Those seem to be the defining strategic arenas right now.
Ultimately, then, the story of AI in this period, mid-2025, it really is one of maturation, maybe even a strategic reckoning. The focus seemed to have sharpened dramatically. It's moved from just asking what AI can do to asking much harder questions. What should it do? How can it be deployed profitably and responsibly? And maybe most critically in the long run, who will ultimately control the platforms and the infrastructure on which it all operates? So what does this all mean for you listening right now? Well, perhaps the takeaway is that the coming year or so in AI might be less about those huge revolutionary breakthroughs that completely shock the system, like the initial launch of ChatGPT did. Instead, it might be more about the difficult, strategic, often less glamorous, and sometimes unseen work. The work of integration into real business processes, the work of optimization for cost and efficiency, the hard work of developing effective governance and ethical frameworks, and the ongoing battle for talent and platform control. The question then becomes, how will you prepare for and engage with these profound, ongoing shifts in your own field, in your own work, and maybe even in your own daily life? That's definitely a question worth pondering, as AI continues its relentless and now perhaps more strategic march to redefine our world.